back, everyone, to Mindset Matters, where we discuss the often overlooked world of mental health and athletics, as well as uncovering the unique and challenging triumphs that come with an athlete's journey. I'm your host, Victoria Virgos, and joining me today is Mike, who is a very experienced mental performance coach who specializes in helping individuals enhance their mental resilience, focus, and overall well being. So, thank you for being here today and giving everyone the opportunity to hear your valuable insights, and I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Awesome. So, obviously, being a mental performance coach, what inspired you to specialize in this field and what kind of led you into this?
So I've worked in fitness and the personal training world. I've been a personal trainer for almost 15 years now. And working in kind of the private sector. So I got my start working for Equinox, which is a kind of a luxury fitness brand. Worked with a lot of high level people, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners. And I got to a point in my career, I was probably about 6 or 7 years in when I realized that fitness was just one aspect of kind of the whole person and the human. And so I started to look into, and I've always had this kind of curiosity, even as a kid, about why do humans operate the way they do? Why do people behave in certain ways? Why do people struggle through seemingly what looks like easy for other people, and some people struggle with it? And so I knew there was a psychology there that was deeper than just fitness I wanted to get into. So I started to learn more about the mind, how the psychology of the person, and we started learning how to do habit change with people. But even then, helping people change nutrition habits, sleep habits, workout habits, even then, people would kind of fall back and regress back to old habits and old patterns. And so I wanted to dig even deeper than that. Like, what's holding some of these patterns in place, these bad behaviors that people are doing, and they want to change consciously, but they're just struggling to change their eating habits or change their exercise habits to get to the level of success that they wanted to. So that's when I started to really look into how to subconsciously reprogram the mind, hypnosis, started studying these different aspects of how we can control the subconscious parts of us, and then started integrating that into my fitness clients until finally I realized, oh, I can do this for just general people who I'm not working with because I could do this on Zoom. I have clients all over the place in Europe. I have clients, one in Ireland I just talked to yesterday on the West Coast. I'm here on the East Coast, a few in Canada, one in Mexico. So I have clients all over the place, and it allows me to like create a greater reach because I can bring these levels of mental skill. And a lot of times when you change the mind, people end up changing their exercise habits as well because the mind is just now supporting the changes they want to make.
That's awesome. Yeah. And when you work with clients or specifically fitness clients, how do you notice like the subconscious mind playing a role in their performance and how they're giving the best that they can?
Yeah, well, so I always work under the assumption that people are doing the best with the tools that they have. And the subconscious is kind of like this thing that's always operating below the surface. You've maybe seen the image of an iceberg that is like you see the top of the iceberg, but 90% of it is actually below the surface. It's underwater. And that's kind of what our conscious mind and subconscious mind are. Our conscious mind is like that 10% that we're seeing above the water that we can we can kind of like direct ourselves and be out in the open, but the other percent below the surface that we can't see, our habits, our behaviors, our ruminating, looping thoughts, all the things we're doing unconsciously is that other 90% of us. So it plays a massive role in how people operate and function on a daily basis, what type of routines and habits they just default to without having to think about it. I mean, for example, you all of us get dressed every single day before we head out the door or we go anywhere. We put our shoes on in the same order. We put our pants on, one leg in, whichever pant leg first. We do the
Yeah.
same thing every time. When we brush our teeth every day, we start and we do the same pattern of brushing every single time. And all of these things are happening unconscious to us. And so the role of wanting to change that and make progress for a client, for an athlete, whoever it is, you kind of have to look at like, what are these patterns? Are these patterns currently serving this person? And if they're conscious of them and they know they want to change them, but they can't bring themselves to do that, then it requires some deeper level of work where we have to go in and figure out, why is this pattern in place? Why is it still here? There's a good reason it's there because again, we're always operating with that assumption that people are doing their best with what they have. That pattern may served them a good purpose at some time, and maybe it was a great strategy at 7 years old, but at 30, when you're on the field and you're having a adult temper tantrum, because you got angry at a teammate or an
Yeah,
opponent, it's not really serving them really well. In fact, it can absolutely distract them from performing at a high level. And so we want to be able to figure out how can we go back and change that pattern and then bring it into the present with these new resources that they can use and channel into a future experience.
I agree. I feel like that's something that's definitely overlooked. Like people kind of don't take into account like how much the stuff they're doing and their habits that they don't even realize they're doing can affect them so
Mhm.
much. And especially competing or performing, like it really comes into place. So
Mhm.
another question I have about that is you mentioned the adult temper tantrum, but how would you advise athletes or people who are striving for perfectionism and maybe things aren't going their way? How would you advise them to continue with optimism, to continue positively?
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of that is you have to be easy on yourself. So some self-compassion and also some forgiveness. A lot of people will carry shame and guilt about, mistakes they've made or, wanting and perfectionism is also one of those things or fear of failure where people won't even try as hard because they have something to fall back on. And it's like, oh, if I didn't succeed at that, well, I wasn't even giving my best attempt, in some way.
Right.
And perfectionism is one of those things where people will procrastinate. They actually just won't even get started on something simply because, if I don't get started, well, then, I haven't failed at anything yet. And it's that failure that the most successful people know. The more you fail, the more reps you get at something and screw up and iterate and improve, the faster you get there. I'll use an example I have two daughters who are both soccer athletes. They play at a very high club level.
Yeah.
One of them actually plays in national tournaments in down in Florida. And the way that they operate is like there's this hold on, lost my train of thought for just a
No
second
worries, no
because
worries.
I put myself down in Florida just
Yep.
watching her play. Repeat back, we were just talking about.
We were talking about striving for like perfectionism, how to deal with
Yeah.
fear of failure.
Failure. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Sorry. So see, here's my moment of I'm not worried about being perfect. I'm just going off the top of my head
Yes.
here. So
Go.
this is part of my journey and growth as well. I have one daughter that is very much an analyzer, and she'll I'm not gonna do this until I really feel like I know it perfectly. And she won't even do that many, or she'll do it a couple times. It's like, oh, I can't do it. Or my other daughter will fall and she'll fail and she'll fail and she'll fail. And she gets it so quickly because she's failed so many times. She's
Right.
been able to iterate with that process. So I think the key there that what you have to look at is you have to focus on the process, not the outcome. So when you create goals, don't create goals on like the outcome, create goals on the process. For example, of a client I just worked with yesterday, older gentleman, he's trying to get back into fitness. His goal is to drop a pant size. That's his outcome. We cannot focus on that. The only bearing he has on whether he loses a pant size or not is if he goes to the gym and focuses on, working out, eating healthy, and sleeping properly so that his body is repairing itself and growing constantly. And so the goal is we're going to focus on a 15-minute workout every day. That's all you're going to do. He's going from nothing. So a 15-minute workout once a day will accumulate to whatever that is, 100 minutes a week. That's a significant amount of time accumulated from nothing. And so the focus is not to worry about the pan size. The focus is just show up every day and focus on the process. The outcome will come as long as you're just showing up and doing the work every day. So I would say that it's also fear is normal. Like people need to realize that fear is a normal part of the process. It becomes a problem when it's disproportionate to the actual task at hand. So if you're completely ceasing up in a moment when you're freezing in a moment when you should be just fear is okay. You don't want to completely I don't know, disable yourself in that way. And if that's the case, then that's a subconscious pattern we have to look at and go back to maybe, hey, where did this start? Where did this happen in childhood? Where maybe this played out in some situation. Get some resources from that. Understand how can we learn from this as an adult, and then move this again into the present, and then and again further into the future, so that we can continue to grow from this opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. Like something I even noticed with myself is you would think if you continue to do something more and more, like that fear that their nerves would go down and down. But I feel like it's kind of the opposite for me. It goes more and more and more nervous each time. And I feel
Yeah.
like that fear of looking bad or not performing my best gets worse. And it just makes me like, just, I know it's not possible to be perfect. And it's something I definitely have to work on. So, with that being
Yeah.
said, what would you recommend for athletes to channel those intense nerves, like the adrenaline, that like out of control feeling, into positivity,
Yeah.
into a good performance?
Well, so you got to understand what's happening when people are having an emotional reaction to something, especially again, something that's disproportionate to the situation. Um, we have to look at it as like there is your nervous system is always controlling. So like we're very tactile humans, meaning when you feel nerves, when you feel sadness, when you feel anger, any of these strong emotions, there's a physical sensation that your body goes through. All of this stuff started at a very physical sensation because the way we experience our world in reality is through our five senses, right? We see, we
Right.
hear, we smell, and we feel, and we taste. So everything starts at the level of just this kind of sensation, and then it goes to perception. What does this sensation I'm experiencing mean? If I feel this tightness in my chest, oh, that means I must be feeling fear or I must be feeling anxiety or whatever that may be. People will say, okay, anxiety and excitement are the same thing. Reframe it. Yeah, great. I understand that, but it's not that simple. You know what I mean? There's more to it than that. And so, like, let's talk about that. I think how do you go ahead and change it? I found personally with my clients, with myself, I'm a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt. I compete a few times a year. At a high level, brown belt is the next level
Yeah.
right before black belt. So I
Right.
mean, it's a dangerous environment. So we're literally trying to either strangle or joint lock somebody until
Yeah.
they submit to us. So it's a high level of danger. There's a high level of fear and anxiety. If I don't manage my emotions in those moments, I'm either going to get injured, I'm going to hurt somebody else, or something can go really wrong. So you have to manage those emotions. One of the most, I think, impactful ways is mental rehearsal. We know from the science, it shows that when we vividly imagine something versus doing it in reality, the brain is still firing those same neural pathways. And so we can learn through mental rehearsal. The key is when you do the mental rehearsal, is, and this is how I do it. I have athletes, clients, whoever it may be. I've worked with a lot of jujitsu athletes who have performance anxiety. A lot of fighters and those types of people have performance anxiety because of the stakes and the risk that's involved. Is actually having them mentally rehearse in reverse, not just seeing them go through their routines and going through their matches or going through their competition and everything working out perfectly, but see it working out perfectly, but start from the end, meaning start from the end and work your way back to the present. So I'm going to go and imagine myself already on the podium with the medal around my neck, successfully having completed it. And then I'm going to go back. What did I do right before that? Well, I went through my sequence of moves and did this. And then what happened right before that? Oh, I see myself on the mat and I'm, fully focused, ready to go. I feel confident, all of those things. And I'm trying to feel those emotions with my body as I'm mentally rehearsing that. And then go back. What did I do before the match to prepare myself? And when you go in reverse, what happens is you can't remember a memory because what we're doing is we're trying to put a future memory into our mind, into our memory, so that when we do step into that actual arena of participating in that competition, we now have a template that we've already focused on that is a successful template. So we feel like our body and our mind have already experienced it in the way we want to. A lot of people, though, make the mistake of just seeing it perfectly. And I think that's where I found that one of the best things you could do when you are mentally rehearsing something is to not just see it going perfectly, but to see the challenges and replaying yourself getting through the challenges, but getting through them in a calm manner.
Yep.
And I think that is one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give people is it's never going to go perfect. Like you said, none of us are perfect. None of us do everything perfect. Sometimes we get lucky and, things just like line up perfectly for us, but most of the time we deal with adversity in our competitions. There's other people out there that are trying to beat us in the same way we're trying to beat them. So it's very unpredictable. So see ourselves going through those challenges, but work through feeling your body in a nice, calm manner while you're doing it will train your body and your nervous system to experience again that future scenario, but with a more calm, more relaxed demeanor. And when you have a calm, relaxed nervous system, the fear, you may feel a little bit of those things, the fear, the lack of confidence, whatever that is, but it's not going to nearly be as strong. You'll be able to manage it in the moment, and your brain has built a template on how it wants to deal with that future scenario.
For sure. Yeah, like I've witnessed it where people are like, "Oh, you're not nervous, you're excited." I'm like, "Well, I don't know, like my heart's racing, my hands are trembling, like I don't know if
Right,
this is what excitement is supposed to feel like."
right.
But for sure with that, I think confidence will come with it if you also replay what can go wrong and getting yourself through that. Um, how
Yeah.
important do you believe it is for people to be confident, especially when performing? How important do you think it is for, um, especially over time? Maybe it's of course it has to build up, but
Yeah.
on a regular, how important do you think being confident is?
I mean, very important. And as you said, like it has to build up over time. I think that's the misconception that people have about confidence is like, oh, when I have confidence, then I'll be able to go and do this thing, in a powerful way. Confidence is a byproduct of your preparation and your success. When you successfully complete a task over and over, you build confidence. I look at it this way: there's a very famous entrepreneur coach. His name's Dan Sullivan. He works with some of the most high performing entrepreneurs in the world, and these are people who are constantly trying to get better, constantly trying
Mhm.
to invest in themselves, and push the envelope of what success is, how much money they can make, how much they can grow their business. His goes through these 4 C's, and I love this. I teach this to my clients. The first one is commitment. First, you have to make the commitment to something. If you don't make the commitment, then you never have an opportunity to build any type of confidence. Once you made the commitment, know that you're going to fail a bunch, you're going to feel uncomfortable, you're going to struggle through things. You need courage. When you have fear, you don't want to be fearless. Again, fear is like a natural response. It's telling us
Yeah.
something's unsafe. We need to look out for it. There's something there that could potentially harm us. You have to have courage in the face of that commitment when fear arises. When you commit to something and you constantly work through and have courage through that fear, you end up building more capabilities. You end up building high tolerance, higher thresholds for dealing with different adversity and circumstances. And when you have a high level of capability, confidence is a result of that. And so this is the process of make the commitment, have the courage to even keep moving forward, regardless of how uncomfortable or much fear you're experiencing. You
Right.
will then build the capabilities, and then confidence will then be the end product of going through that process. And from there, you can make larger commitments. You're already familiar with courage being the necessary part of it. And if I feel there's one part in there where people will fall apart, it's the courage piece. Is
Hmm.
people will just give up because something's hard, it's uncomfortable, it's challenging. If you can push through and have courage in those moments, you build the capabilities, and confidence just comes, along for the ride.
I agree 100%. I see it happen too, even like um watching boxing matches, I just see sometimes like body language from the start, like you can tell if they've already given up mentally. And
Yeah.
it I'll be honest, it's happened to me in the past before too. Like there's some things I've had to work through, but I definitely agree with that. And so say there's maybe there's a big event or a big tournament that's upcoming and it's a pretty big deal. Um, maybe someone like myself, this has happened. They're experiencing anxiety and they're experiencing overthinking. How do you believe the self-talk and visualization should look leading up to it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really important part of that process. The self-talk, especially because, again, the stuff that's happening below the surface subconsciously is the stuff we're just automatically doing. And oftentimes, because of that lack of safety, because of the discomfort, because of those aspects of performing at a high level and competition, negative self-talk is generally always going to be there, chirping that critical kind of voice in your head. It's important to recognize it. It's important to redirect it and break that pattern and not engage with it that much. And also, too, whose voice is that? That's in your mind. Is it your voice? Is it someone else's voice?
True.
Like, and so like we need to
Yeah.
become aware of that. But it is a pattern we need to break, and we need to start feeding ourselves. our default, just kind of like historically from us just evolving as humans, is we have a negativity bias. When you go to school, they don't circle all the right answers on your test. They circle all the wrong ones, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much negativity. You could have the greatest relationship in the world with your partner, and then one bad thing goes wrong, and your whole relationship was a disaster, right? Because all that's remembered is that one bad thing, and all the other good things are completely, forgotten. So we have a negativity bias as a human. We're going to think about that. So we already are defaulting to having this negative chatter in our mind. We have to consciously take control of that process. And for me, I think it's practicing speaking to yourself in the way that you want to be speaking to yourself. Part of that is limiting beliefs and more positive beliefs. You need to start saying what you want. Now, part of the unconscious mind that a lot of people don't realize is you can't say it doesn't understand negatives. So if you were to say don't think that way, or don't run, all of those things, like your mind first has to go run, and then it has to delete the don't part. And so it's very inefficient, as opposed to
Mhm.
just saying walk, or
Yeah.
think positive, or whatever it is. Direct the unconscious with the direct thing you want. um Oftentimes when I even ask people when they want to make a change, they want to lose weight, and I was like, well, so what do you want? What's your goal? Well, I don't want to feel like this anymore, or I'm sick and tired of having no energy, and I'm like, okay, that's what you don't want. What do you want? Get very clear on that. So I think being very clear and having a vision for what it is that you want to experience is where everything starts. You have to know what it is you want to move towards. There needs to be a target. And
Right.
then you need to develop a strategy towards that target. What do I need to do day to day, week to week, month to month to get me closer to that? And then where we trip up is the mind. That's when all the stuff starts coming in, the limiting beliefs that, oh, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you failed in the past, all of those aspects of the mind. That's when we need to do the work to redirect that and really be conscious of programming ourselves with the things we want to experience. I think, again, if we were to not brush our teeth anymore, like if you were not to brush your teeth, what do you think would happen to your mouth? What do you think would happen to your hygiene? It would be atrocious. What if
Yeah.
you stopped showering? You know what I mean? What if, like, think about that.
Yeah.
So like we have to keep these maintenance levels up in order to just take care of ourselves in a way, and perform better. Why would we think we wouldn't do that for our mind too? We're just leaving it up to chance and all these old programs. Like, take conscious, what's 5 minutes of your day to focus on what do I want? How can I direct my attention towards that? What are the things I need to say to myself? How do I need to show up powerfully for those? Why not rehearse doing those things in the way I want to do them, instead of seeing myself failing at them? Take conscious control of that process, and I think amazing things can happen if you just practice that every day.
Yeah. And kind of touching on what we mentioned earlier, like it does take practice because people are always, they want that perfection, so they don't even bother to try. Like
Yes, deliberate
practice,
practice.
yeah,
Deliberate practice. Yeah.
in that journey, like it plays a huge part. So, we talked about how we can do the self work. How important do you think it is for someone, maybe like an athlete or anyone, to have support, a good environment? I know I've had a past where it was kind of hard to excel my best because of who I was with, where I was at some point. Making that change
Yeah.
allowed me to open so many more doors and to grow. So, how important do you think that is?
I mean, very important. I think a big part of that is, there's a lot of negativity that can come to us outside of us as well. I mean, we're already dealing with our own negativity, but like when we have negativity coming from outside of us, maybe expectations put on us by parents, or coaches or organizations that we're in, that can be very daunting. It can be very difficult. I think it's important to set boundaries from those things. I think it's important to eliminate distractions. That's really important. Social media consumption is one of those things where, I don't know about you, but if I'm on it for too long, I feel gross. Like,
Me
I just feel
too.
like if
Oh,
I'm going through
yes.
my feed, I did something a few weeks ago personally, whereas I deleted my Instagram and my Facebook and all that stuff from my phone for a week and said, I'm just not going to go on it. I was so much happier for the next 7 days. I was
Really?
engaging in deeper conversations with people. I wasn't Yeah, I mean, because what is your feed often giving you? It's giving you, it depends on what your algorithm is, but for a lot of
Right.
people, it's negative stuff. It's, you're seeing other people's lives, and these people are only putting their best portions of their lives on there. It's
Yeah,
perfectly
for
curated
sure.
for what they want you to see. And you're then comparing yourself. And then there's this imposter syndrome. Oh my God, look at what so and so is doing. I'm not doing that because I don't know about you. I have not met one person that has everything together. Not everybody. I've worked with one of my clients is a billionaire CEO of a tech company.
Yeah,
Even he has issues, and has troubles and problems. Like there's nobody out there who has it all together or has it figured out for that matter. And if they do, they're lying. We're all so I think with that, we have to understand that um, getting a good support system around you is super important. I mean, if you have good coaches and good people that are listening and have your best interests at play, I think that builds trust. I think when you feel like you can trust somebody, you give more of yourself and put more of yourself into whatever that sport is or whatever that venture is that you're heading into. So I think that's super important. I think that's an important thing for coaches to think about is have your athletes best interests. Don't coddle them because you
Mhm.
do need to be hard on them and push them and serve them the bitter medicine sometimes if they're not if they are kind of like just going through the motions and not
Yeah,
allowing themselves to get uncomfortable. But I do think you have to listen, be empathetic, understand, um and get a coach, get somebody who is like who models what it is you would like to have for yourself as well.
100%. Yeah. And no, I think the social media part is so true. It's like, it's only good things. It's only the perfect part of people's life. And I find myself sometimes just feeling like so bad, like, why am I not doing
Yeah.
this? Or I feel so behind.
Hmm.
I've thought about definitely deleting it, like social medias for a
Yeah.
couple times. And I,
It's a good little experiment to see how you
yeah.
feel afterwards. Yeah. And I've gone back to it. I still haven't brought it back on my home screen. I have to literally search and go to Instagram. Obviously,
Mhm.
that's how we linked up. And so, with something like that, I see it as like, I'm not able to make the connections I make with people and have the reach I do without it. At the same time, I also have to be conscious of my mental health. And if I'm draining myself, I do not have the ability to show up as my best possible self to serve the people that I want to serve. And I think people really need to take that into account. Your own, self-care and personal health matters so that you can show up as powerfully as you need to for your sport, for your family, etc.
That's fantastic. And we've covered a lot. So, kind of to wrap it up, what do you suggest are some frequent habits or routines that you recommend for maybe not just athletes, maybe for everyone to
Yeah.
maintain good mental health, good habits, and to take care of themselves?
Well, I think that most people don't focus on recovery. I mean, if we're talking
Mhm.
about athletes, if we're talking about high performing business people, whoever it may be, a lot of those people are running themselves like to the bone. Maybe their workouts are completely dialed in, maybe their nutrition's dialed in. But for me, I think sleep is one of the most important aspects. I think when you're young, especially young athletes, you can get away with not sleeping. You can get away with, you know, I guess, staying out late and doing those things and still being able to perform the next day because your body's just pumping out so many of these like, hormones like, growth hormone and testosterone and all these things that are helping your body repair and recover itself. But there comes a tipping point where that no longer is the case, and you really have to focus on developing a good habit and a good routine. And if you listen to some of the top athletes in the world, the people are performing at the highest level, they know that getting like 10 hours of sleep, 8 to 10 hours of sleep is paramount for them in order to be able to perform as best they can. The strategy I give everybody that I think is one of the best for one, light exposure I think is extremely important. You need to set your circadian clock so it's easy to go to bed at nighttime. That starts in the morning when you wake up, is seeing natural sunlight as soon as you can. Get it into your eyes for like 3 to 5 minutes as soon as you wake up. That sets the clock so that your body knows when to get tired. The other piece of that is on the tail end of your day. I think one of the best habits that people can get into is it's super simple. I'll share it now with your audience. It's a 3, 2, 1, and it simply is 3 hours before bed, stop eating. 2 hours before bed, stop drinking any liquids. And 1 hour before bed, turn off all your screens. And preferably, if you can wear blue light blocking glasses, that's great as well. So that, again, the brain knows to signal to start producing melatonin so that you can get into a deep sleep. The 3 hours for, and if you want to take it further, some people will say 10, 10, 3, 2, 1, 10, meaning no caffeine 10 hours before bed. So if it's 10 o'clock, that's, you can do the math there.
Yeah.
You want to stop having coffee by a certain point in time. So you want to do that 3 hours because your food's totally digested. Your body's going to produce the right hormones it needs to at night to really get into deep sleep. You're not going to have to get up to go to the bathroom if you stop drinking 2 hours. And the
Yeah.
screens will, again, get your body to, understand that, oh, this is nighttime. This is time for me to go to bed. You're just going to fall into a deeper sleep. And that's a great strategy that I would focus on is the sleep part. I think like anybody can benefit from that.
I'm gonna try that for sure because
Yeah.
I find myself sometimes I get home late and I'm just like I snack on something after training and
Mm-hmm.
it's like an hour, not even before bed sometimes. I'm like, I feel so
Mm-hmm.
sluggish. I don't feel good. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so those are great points. That is perfect. I have definitely learned a lot and was really happy we were able to do this. I will
Great.
send you this file for sure. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining me and for taking the time out of your day to do this. It means a lot.
Beautiful. It was a great conversation. Thanks, Victoria.